Okay, so good morning, everyone. Bonjour, since you're in France this morning, and welcome to Paris. I just hope everyone is well settled and comfortable here with the Parc Monceau just by the window. First of all, on behalf of the Office for Climate Education, I would like to welcome you in Paris because I know that many of you have traveled long hours to join us this morning, so thanks a lot. Some have crossed Paris, okay, but I mean, many of you have come from a long way. In this room, we have the representatives of no less than 18 countries. Okay, it's 9:22, so maybe we've got like maybe 15 countries for the moment and 18 in a few minutes, I don't know, but still 18. So if you're okay, maybe we could raise the hand when I mention your country. We'll see if you're just all around or not. We should have people from China. Do you have people from China? Yes, like raise your hand like that, please. Thank you. Welcome. My name is Juan. Okay, thank you. Malaysia. Yeah, oh la la! Oh, delegation of Malaysia. So you'll give your names in networking, please. We've got people from Singapore. Hello. Yes, hello, thank you. From Pakistan? Hello. Yes, many people too. Thanks, welcome. Iran? Iran, sorry, it's me, I'm not pronouncing it well. Thank you. Mexico? Mexico, yes, 3 people, good. Charlie? Charlie are still in bed, maybe, okay. Honduras? Honduras is in the plane, maybe. Colombia? Yes, thank you. We've got like at least 3 people from Colombia. Democratic Republic of Congo? No one for the moment. Kenya? Thank you. We've got, are you Catherine? No. You've got another Catherine in the plane, I think, for the moment. She's in the plane. She's coming. Yeah, okay, it's what I heard. Nigeria? Not yet. Zimbabwe? USA? Yes, thank you. Welcome. Canada? 2 people from Canada. Okay. You'll talk afterwards. Yes. Yeah, it's to make friends. You know, just. We've got Germany. Welcome. Belgium. Brussels? No, we've got someone coming from Brussels, but yeah, but it's Belgium. Yeah, it's Belgium, you know. And France, please, French people. Okay, I'm not alone here tonight. Okay, so wherever you come from, you. Yeah, but we've got people from Ukraine. I don't know. It wasn't. I didn't have the name on my text. I'm from Mauritius. So do we have some other countries? Indonesia, thank you. Denmark. Mm-hmm. The information of the OCE are not always good, you know, that's why. But anyway, but really, so I guess we've got like more than 20 not nationalities, but countries represented. It's great. It's a great moment. Thank you. So thank you for being here, and thank you for all devoting this week to explore how to advance climate change education implementation worldwide. Sorry. You have a great time in France and go home with lots of ideas, enthusiasm, and friends, maybe. As you must have noticed, we're in a very special place, a very French place, the magnificent Hôtel Pereire in French, which was built at the end of the 19th century. This place is home to the philanthropic institution Simone and Cino Del Duca Foundation, which plays an important role in supporting literature, art, and science. It was created by Simone Del Duca in 1975 in tribute of her late husband, Cino. You've seen a sculpture of Cino and his cigar just outside. She wanted to... are you okay with the mic? Can you hear me well? I've got the impression... Yeah. She wanted, it was in tribute to her late husband, Cino. It was an art lover. I change the mic? Is it better with this one? Yeah, I could hear that was a part of the mic. Thank you. Sorry. So he was an art lover and a major newspaper publisher. And when she died, she created the foundation in 1975. And when she died, like 30 years later, she transmitted it to the Institut de France, French Institute, that is receiving us today. The Hôtel Pereire is a charming park, the Parc Monceau, quite famous in France. It's small, it's really small. I don't know if you've heard the song which welcomed us. Maybe some who speak French heard Le Parc Monceau from Yves Duteil. Yeah, a long way, you know, a long time ago. It was one of my favorite singers when I was a child. A long time ago, I had all these records. And in its song, it speaks about Parc Monceau because he was going at school nearby. And he's talking about his history lessons and his first kiss in Parc Monceau, of course. But so I find it was a good timing to read such a song to welcome you today. So after this opening in song, let me quickly introduce myself. My name is Dorothée Moisan, Dorothy, if you have to call me, should be okay. I'm a French journalist, I'm a freelance journalist, and I worked for 20 years for Agence France Presse, AFP, that you must know. And a few years ago, I decided to go back to school to study, guess what? Climate change. Yes. And so, which makes me all the more delighted to welcome you today, and because I'm a living proof that it's not, this climate change education shouldn't be directed only towards the schools and the school system, but to any part of the population and any sector of activity, because it would be the only way to make a difference. Oops, sorry. Okay, so let's talk about what brings us here today, climate change education. Until a few years ago, it wasn't existing in France, like in other many countries, but you know, it's changing quite quickly. And just for proof, 3 months ago, just before summer, the CNED, which is the Institut, the French Center for Distance Learning, has launched its first free online course on climate and biodiversity for all French people, which is quite new and quite important. So, and if I'm not mistaken, it was in partnership with OCE, I think, yes, the Office for Climate Education. So for once, let's try to see the glass not half empty, but half full. It would be a good decision, I guess, for this seminar. So now let's take a look at the morning menu. I think you've got it on your. It's not on the screen, but I guess you've got it in your bag. We're going at the beginning to have a few words of introduction with Pierre Léna and Eric Guilyardi from the Office for Climate Education, the representatives of the OCE. Then we'll have the pleasure to listening to a presentation of Sophie Szopa to the latest IPCC findings about climate change. This will be followed by 3 roundtables. In the middle of it, another coffee break. Okay, you'll be able just to get a little caffeine. The first of this roundtable will be about the role of national and international institutions, about, of course, climate change education. The second one, after the coffee break, on the role of philanthropic partners, and the last one on the role of development agencies. So we're going to try to keep this morning lively and dynamic so that you don't fall asleep on your chairs. We'll do our maximum. And in 4 hours' time, at last, you'll be authorized to eat something and to enjoy the cocktail reception for a bite to eat and some networking. It will be just in the same premises. So I wish you an excellent morning at Parc Monceau. You'll be able just to go and have a walk, maybe afterwards. And for the moment, I'm going to welcome Pierre Léna, if you want to go just here. Pierre is the honorary president of the Office for Climate Education. He's an astrophysicist, member of the French Academy of Sciences, and is one of the creators of the educational program La main à la pâte, an active method of introducing science to primary schools. But I don't have anything more to say. Pierre Léna.
Well, thank you very much for this introduction. I'm extremely glad to be here with all of you and to greet you in this seminar. I will speak on behalf of the office, of course, but also, and maybe especially on the behalf of the Académie des Sciences. I'm really delighted to open this OCE seminar international seminar, which is the second one. But we had many international seminars with La Main à la Pâte before. Some of you had participated years ago. And you will be in Paris and in our beautiful Normandy. I hope the weather will be good for the rest of the week. I'd like to express my gratitude to the Fondation Del Duca for hosting us, and to all the institutions in your various countries who have contributed to your presence today by funding, by helping for travel, by visas, and so on. So thank you to all. And of course, I greet many friendly faces whom I am happy to see here, met over the 20 years of La Main à la Pâte activity in our common effort to teach science and to care for children and teenagers. So today, climate education brings us together. When 5 years ago, with David Wilgenbus, we began to plan for the office, which had grown considerably since then, since that time it was only the two of us, with La Main à la Pâte, of course. We had the ambition, which was recognized soon by UNESCO and IPCC, which, since both these institutions have been able to associate OCE to their work. And we have also been present in the successive COP in a rather fruitful and growing manner. 5 years ago, in most countries, the attention of the public, of the parents, of the teachers, and education system for climate change was very modest, if any. And this is documented in several UNESCO reports in the late 2010 or so. And the 2015 Paris Agreement, in its Article 12, which was our guiding light in a sense, was not widely implemented. Successive IPCC reports, and we had a number of those since 2015 with the 1.5 degree, the cryosphere and ocean, and etc. They were listened by scientists, sometimes by politicians, but seldom by the rest of the population, and probably never, almost never, by school teachers. Today, the situation has changed. A physical perception of the climate change is present. We have those heat waves, these extreme events, and so the public is resenting the effect physically. Nevertheless, recent studies in our country, for instance, and I believe it's the same elsewhere, people would agree that climate change exists, but on the other hand, they remain quite skeptic on the cause. And it's something like business as usual, which is the motto that IPCC claims to avoid for the future, or education as usual, the motto we have for the future. It's like mind as usual. We know that climate change is there, but we'll see that tomorrow or next week or next year or even later. The difficult mitigation of adaptation and mitigation measures, which is, of course, the main recommendation of the IPCC, are discussed in many countries, but they provoke, as we have seen in France, debate and crisis. On the positive side, we clearly see slow but real motion, for example, aeronautical or automotive industries, which are, of course, energy consuming on a very large scale, are seeking to prepare better people for the future, to change their production systems. And new jobs linked to the ecological transition are being offered to young people. But these young people, whose future depends on our schools, on our teachers, are showing great concern, sometimes even despair for their future, and more rarely also sometimes to personal commitment for things to change. And I can observe that among my own grandchildren and their friends. The future for them, the future of human society seems bleak, and they can't see how to grow up and to assume their adult stature, or even, and this is worrisome at least, bring new children into the world. In such a rapidly changing landscape, what answers can our education systems provide to the youth and therefore to the teachers? 5 years ago, when we created the office, we thought that the main task was to give young people the tools to understand climate change and therefore to help teachers to do this from elementary school to high school. We wanted to offer these young people simple actions to alleviate their climate anxiety. Then, faced with the scale of the task and the slowness of political decisions, we realized soon the limits of this nevertheless essential action. We need to be more inventive, better adapted to the particular conditions of each economy, each education system, each cultural tradition, each country, and this in a global vision of the problem. We need to share our solutions more widely, even more than in the past. We need to cultivate hope in teachers and their pupils, despite the often despairing appearances, and this is not so easy. This seminar will provide an opportunity to exchange ideas, to present successful initiatives, to analyze difficulties, to forge links, and to open disciplines, to open up new horizons, especially in Africa, for the office. You will reflect on the respective roles of traditional scientific disciplines and humanities or social sciences in climate change education, something which was not really present at the creation of the office. You will assess the importance and degree of collaboration which is needed with the scientific community in each of your countries, and you probably will find ways to improve this communication with the science community. So, I sincerely hope that this seminar will be useful to each and every one of you, but I can already assure you that your participation and your exchanges will be extremely useful in better defining the role and the future of OCE. The president of OCE, Eric Guilyardi, is now organizing, with David, of course, a vision for the future of this young institution, the office, and we need the feedback from all of you to look at this future. We thank you for this undertaking this week, for this long journey that you made, and to spend a week with us. Have a good time.
Thank you, Pierre, for this first introduction. So now we welcome on the stage Eric Guilyardi. Eric is an oceanographer and a climatologist. He's been a main author and a contributor to IPCC. He's a researcher in the CNRS, and he's totally committed to passing on his knowledge. So, Eric, that's your turn.
Thank you very much for this introduction. Hello, everybody, and I want to join Pierre in welcoming you in Paris and for this day that the whole team has been preparing for the last month. So how does this work? I guess this is for like this. Oh, works wonderful. After this, of course, as always, brilliant introduction by Pierre, I'm going to present you in more detail what the OCE is about, although I see a number of friends and the people familiar with the OCE. But so the OCE really is happening in a context that is pretty exciting. I think, and Pierre was mentioning, we would never have thought 5 years ago when we launched the OCE that it would be such an amazing take-up by the international community on climate change education. The Paris Agreement clearly laid the foundations with this famous Article 12, which clearly established the need for all segments of population to know more about climate change and the different dimensions. But also the UN agenda has been really increasing with climate change education. UNESCO, of course, and we'll hear a bit more about it. I will present a few initiatives, but UNESCO is playing a key role in getting all the community together. Of course, UNFCCCs. We've seen a raising interest of education at COPs, and I'll come back to that. IPCC, of course, which is providing the scientific basis, but also is more and more showing the evidence for the role of education in tackling this climate change problem or challenge that we have. And also, I think it's important to say that climate change is not the only challenge the international community is facing. There are the 17 SDGs, and it's important to keep in mind that all these are interconnected. So this context is the institutional context, but also we've seen the youth mobilizing in many countries, demanding more education on this topic to be fully tooled to understand, but also act as citizens. So local and regional actors as well, and also the ministries of education and environment in many countries are getting mobilized for this. So it's a pretty exciting environment. Now, of course, I think that the best way to frame that, and this was said by Stefania Giannini, so the Assistant Director General for Education at UNESCO at the last COP, where she said that education is the most transformational climate adaptation action. And I think she's right. This is really one of the key actions we can do to prepare the future. Even though we need to act now, education is so key. So, of course, this context is exciting, but there are a number of challenges. Why is climate change education so difficult in a way and not that much spread at the moment? There are a number of reasons, and I've listed a few here, and this seminar will precisely be about how we deal with those and how we make progress. Curricula first. We know that in educational system, curricula is the base of everything. If the curricula doesn't mention the word climate change, which today is still true for almost half of the countries, and it's improving. I mean, the UNESCO studies are showing us this is improving regularly, but it's still a challenge. Now, of course, it's not because the word is in the curricula that it actually happens. We need pedagogical resources, and this is where the OCE plays a key role, but also many of what you're all doing. But also the professional development of teachers. This is hard. This is a hard topic for teachers, for many reasons that will be part of the discussion we'll have this week. It is hard because we have to deal with complexity, the complexity of the science, but also the fact that it's also socially charged questions. In many countries, if you're teaching climate change education, you become an advocate or you're making a political stance or whatever. So how do we get out of this to just making as something we have to learn about? Dealing with controversy and emotions now in the classroom. We never thought 5 years ago when the OCE developed resources based on IPCC that we would have to do a sequence on how to deal with emotions in the classroom. This is typically showing that width we're trying to address. Now, of course, education systems are not all ready to address such a complex topic, having disciplines in silos, having pedagogies that are not adapted to the hands-on pedagogy that La Main, La Patte, and many others have been championing for many years. So this needs educational systems also to adapt, and we know this is hard, this takes time. And also, if you look at where the funding goes and the political priorities, most of the funding in what we call ACE, Action for Climate Empowerment, goes in public awareness about climate change, which of course is important, but only about 17% go into actual formal education. So all these are showing where priorities are, and we need to address all of them at our respective levels. But I think probably most importantly, the teachers need to be prepared and supported for this mission. They're really at the heart of all this. And if the teachers are not equipped to deal with that, we're missing a huge part. And this is really what sets the context for what the OC is doing. Right, I think a very exciting development over the last year or so is the Greening Education Partnership, which was established by the UN in the fall of 2022. And the secretary is done by UNESCO, and we're very happy to have June Morashi here from UNESCO will tell us maybe a bit more about it. It's really to foster capacity building in climate change education. So exactly what we're talking about during this workshop. It's organized around 4 pillars: greening schools, greening curriculum, greening teacher training, and education systems capacity. See, this pillar 3 is so important, and greening communities. There are 3 goals: doing networking, sharing a lot of what we'll do, and we can view this international seminar as a contribution to the JEP discussions. Setting standards. What is quality climate change education? That's a hard question that will need a lot of work from the whole community, and also putting together a pilot project. Right, so teachers at COP, we've seen an amazing growing presence. And, oops, sorry, how do I go back? Yes. So really the first meeting, so there was the Paris Agreement in 21, but it's really the Glasgow COP that brought it back on the table. And since, there's been really an increase of the presence of education at COP. So the OC has been there to organize the Teachers COP, which is becoming a very prominent feature. And at this coming COP, the UEA has pledged to make it a really key venue for climate change education by organizing a huge climate pavilion where a number of us institutions, and including OC, are part of organizing this. So it's going to be extremely exciting. It's organized around the JEP, and so it's going to be really probably the first time, and we hope this continues in COPs, that the education is so present, probably also a head of state event. So these things are really happening. Right, so the OCE really, that mission and that vision that Pierre, of course, set up, but also with our climate change community, is to provide that capacity building for educators to equip the young generation for the foundations for climate change, but also all those soft skills to act as citizens in the world. And it's really, we cannot think of one without the other. Of course, we have a strong foundation on science. This is so important, but it shouldn't be just narrowly focused on science, but also linking with the other SDGs in a way. So, right, so the office was created 5 years ago now. Pierre also already said that La Main à la Pâte was such a key founding members, and we're still under the auspices of La Main à la Pâte, but also the UNESCO auspices, so OC is a Category 2 center of UNESCO. It's creating that amazing link with the member states, the countries, and many programs, and we're blessed with this. It comes with responsibility as well, we realize this. The rooting in the science community is absolutely key. And the fact that, you know, as a climate scientist, I'm not the president, is really to make that link strong. Our community, science community, has been involved in formal education, primary, secondary school for many decades. But I think thanks to OC now, we can do it in a professional, in a sustained and a visible way. So it's really becoming that important. And you can see that, of course, we have the strong links with IPCC, but also with founding members in France, and now we hope to expand that internationally with major scientific institutions. Of course, and we're also coordinating the Pillar 2, the green curriculum, for the JEP. Right, so the mission is provide capacity building for education systems. And really, we're targeting primary and secondary school teachers, formal education, both in developing and developed countries. Initially, OC was set up for developing countries by thinking this is where the need is really acute, but actually we realized the need is everywhere. So OC now is trying to work everywhere. It's a challenge. Yes, Dorothea, I'm making progress. So of course, the portfolio that the OC develops, and we'll hear much more about this, is pedagogical resources, the summary for policymakers, not for policymakers, for teachers, precisely. The professional development of teachers, the necessary practice. We know those three aspects are really inseparable if we want to have an impact, but they're not enough. We also need to work with the education system and the policymakers to make sure that this portfolio integrates the whole education system. And we know this is hard. So it's a co-construction work, and really OC is acting to be a glue, a connective tissue between that global IPCC science and the local education systems, so it actually has an impact. Last but not least, as I said, it's the support of the science community, which is absolutely important. As scientists, we know how to deal with higher education, but not so much with primary and secondary, and the OC is there to make that. So we have a number of guiding principles. Scientific foundation, I already said it, it's key, it's really the backbone, but also interdisciplinarity. You know, it's the links with all the other SDGs, if you like, and the soft skills and all these different aspects. Active pedagogies are key. They're really, science is not something you receive, you have to practice it. It's a hands-on thing. We like that work of it's addressing the head, the heart, and the hand. And we need those three dimensions. This is so important. Cooperation, accessibility, and relevance are essential to have that long-term impact and legacy. However brilliant, it's not a team of 12 people in Paris that will know how to develop things locally. And some dialect project and others we'll talk about have shown that it's really the cooperation with the local actors that many of you represent here that makes the difference. It needs to be co-constructed, co-acted, and now we're seeing that impact. So we're also blessed with a scientific and pedagogical committee, and a number of members are here. This is absolutely essential that all resources are professional development done by the OC are vetted scientifically and pedagogically by the experts. And we have 20 of them worldwide, and this is so important. Oops, sorry. Now I'm getting confused by this, yeah. And really we hear a lot about climate literacy, and for us, the short word about climate literacy is really those developing critical minds and hopeful hearts. I think it's Pierre initially who brought that in the OC, but I think this is really the combination of those two aspects is so important. It's a moral duty to project ourselves positively, especially when you're dealing with children. We cannot paint a doom and gloom future, which is often what the youth is faced with in the media and others. So at OC, we really strive to do that. It's not to be unrealistic about the challenge we're facing, but there are many ways in which we can really project positively, and this is so important. Right, I won't spend too much time on this, how we develop resources. We start from IPCC report. This is key, and IPCC is there at all the stages of where we develop these. We do summary for teachers, pedagogical guides, number of multimedia resources, and well, you'll hear a lot more about this during those few days, and some of you are already quite familiar. Right, the ALEC project is clearly a flagship for OCE, has been showing the huge potential of going to scale, working with local actors who are then able to scale and to convince ministries and countries to change the way they do things. So we're really happy of seeing that success. And it also shows that to have an impact, to be relevant, to go to scale, it needs that collaboration and bridging the gap between the global perspective and the local one. And this is really, I think, what the OCE's role is clearly making a difference. Also, we learn from this project, and this is informing new projects, for example, the one we're developing in Africa that we'll talk about later today. Right, so to conclude, I think it's exciting times for climate change education. You can call it different ways. I like the sustainable or human development aspects. It's not just about, the head, it's all parts of us, and also working together, creating the links that we sometimes miss among each other, but also with the nature. We have to listen to the teacher and the students. They tell us a lot about what should be done. These things shouldn't be devised in an office somewhere in a ministry, but really in collaboration. The central role of science education, climate change education, is also a way to learn about science and science education. This is key. We have to really make sure this happens, because a lot of the actors in climate change education tend to forget this is first and foremost science. The systemic view, the curriculum, all the disciplines, the school approach, the whole school approach, all that systemic view needs to be taken into account. This is hard, but it's essential to have an impact. Again, the teachers, both initial and continuous professional development is key. It's difficult, it's hard, it works differently in different countries, but we have really to do that fine-tuning with countries. It cannot be a one-size-fits-all. We have to work with the countries. As I was saying, we need to move in the narrative from anxiety to agency. This is absolutely key, and I think this is a challenge we as scientists are facing, but also as educators. And we share that. I think it's an ethical responsibility in that framing. And last but not least, this requires political leadership for success. And I'm really happy to see that the UNESCO is playing a key role, and also the COPs in pushing that. So political leadership, but also financial leadership, organizing this. And through the JEB, there will be that multi-partner trust fund, which is going to be a way of putting together all the financial efforts towards that in a coherent way. So to finish up, I really want to thank first all of you, but also all the institutions, people that have been making OC happen, have been funding it, but also contributing to its success. We owe you a lot, and your trust is really goes to our heart. It's so important that we feel that we are on a common mission. So I wish you a wonderful seminar. Thank you for bringing all your experience and expertise to share with the team, and I'm sure the whole team is going to be listening and exchanging with all of you during this week. So thank you and have a wonderful seminar.
Thank you, Eric, not for being in the time, but for your presentation, because thank you, it was really interesting. I didn't interrupt you, you see. So we're going to welcome Sophie Szopa. Are you, do you need anything, Sophie, for your presentation? Yeah?
Yes, my slides.
Your slides, I think you've got the, yes, they're going to be available, don't worry. So talking about climate education, it's high time for us to shed a light about climate. That's why we just welcome Sophie. Sophie Szopa is a climate scientist. To be more precise, she's a researcher in atmospheric chemistry. She's Director of Research and Vice President for Sustainable Development at the French University of Paris-Saclay. And she's going to talk about the most important subject in the world today. Please give a round of applause, please, for Sophie Szopa.
Thank you. So, as already said, the role of the IPCC and the scientists who are involved in writing the report is to assess the knowledge and to provide policy-relevant information to policymakers. So making everyone know and understand this information is essential, obviously, to ensure that the decisions taken are the best for everyone and to keep and take everyone on board of the decision process. So right now we'll rapidly go through the main conclusion of the synthesis report, which was published in March this year. So I could speak 3 hours with the same deck of slides. I only have 25 minutes, I think. So I hope to give you the momentum to come back to this synthesis report, which is, I think, relatively accessible for everyone, or at least for a teacher. And to keep in mind also that there is a lot of material in the IPCC report themselves, such as the frequently asked questions, which are written for larger audience and for teachers. So I hope you will be inspired and you will have the envy to go back to the report. So we now, unfortunately, we are all familiar with the extreme and the way climate change increase the frequency and the intensity of extreme events. But the observation gathered in the Working Group 1 report also show the widespread and rapid physical changes in all the components of the climate system, and in particular in the cryosphere and in the ocean. And we also see that some physical changes can combine and give other impacts, such as drought and heat wave, which can cause conditions which are prone for fire, acidification in the ocean with marine heat wave, which put a lot of pressure on life in the ocean, and obviously a lot of problem on coastal areas due to increase both of tropical, intense tropical storm and sea level rise. So the observation also shows that it causes a lot of pressure both on the human and natural system. We know that half of the ecosystem have moved poleward or toward highest mountain areas. We already see a lot of difficulty for some sectors such as agriculture, which also cause some shortage in food production. We see a lot of problem on health, so not only due to heat wave, and which already cause a lot of mortality, but a lot of other problems such as larger diffusion of some diseases and some mental health problems, which are not due to eco-anxiety, but due to the difficulty to survive to very strong stresses. So these adverse impacts from human-caused climate change will continue to intensify, unfortunately, and Working Group 2 experts also highlight the more and more complex risk to cope with. We see here two examples, one which will remind us also what happened in Canada this year, which is the example of mega wildfire, which cause both the problem of fire itself, but also of air pollution and water pollution, and the difficulty to cope with all this difficulty at the same time, or the pressure for urban areas due to strong storms that cause pressure on the energy system, for example, and a lot of difficulty occurring at the same time and very difficult to cope with. So, as already said, we are now able to show that the totality of the current warming is due to human activities, with a strong warming effect which is due to the increase of GHG, and which is partially masked for the moment by particles from air pollution, but this signal due to air pollution is something which is decreasing at the global scale, so we will see some unmasking of the effect of greenhouse gases. And this effect from greenhouse gases is due to emission that results from the unsustainable way we produce and use energy and the way we use land. So you see on the right that the emission continue to grow with a very strong signal which is due to the use of fossil fuel, but also some signal in gray due to deforestation and the way we use land and the other greenhouse gases. So the synthesis report really stress the uneven distribution of emission, both the historical cumulative CO2 emission, which is very important because this is this cumulative emission which led to the 1.1 warming. And 40% of this historical emission are due to emission from Europe and North America. And we still have a very uneven distribution of the current emission, with 10% of the household causing 40% of the emission, whereas half of the world population is only cause only less than 15% of the total emission. This asymmetry can also be seen from the point of view of the vulnerability, and we see here that a lot of countries which are very vulnerable were very few involved in the historical emission and in the current emission. So some progress have been done and are also visible in the scientific literature. We see a decline of greenhouse gas emission in more than 18 countries, essentially in Europe and the USA. More than half of the greenhouse gas emission are now in the scope of public policies. We have a cost of renewable energy which is relatively low and which decreased a lot over the past 10 years. And we also see some progress in adaptation planning. However, we also see a lot of maladaptation, a lack of finance to really have adaptation which are at the level necessary to really face the problem we will have in the future. The remaining carbon budget is also soon exhausted, the carbon budget to stay in the Paris Agreement zone. So we had, at the beginning of 2020, only 500 teragram of CO2 to add to the atmosphere to reach the 1.5 warming. And we know that all the infrastructure we already built before 2020 were sufficient if we use them until the end of their planned use to consume all this 1.5 carbon budget, and it will already consume part of the 2-degree budget. And actually the quantity estimated during the IPCC report has been revised because we are now in 2023 and we only have half of this quantity now as a remaining carbon budget to remain below 1.5 degree warming. So we know that even if theoretically we could level off the warming at the level it reached so far, we could by reaching net zero CO2 emission, which is either no emission or more probably a few emission which could be compensated with negative CO2 emission. As far as we do not reach this net zero, we will continue to add warming to see an increase of this warming. We know that we cannot reach net zero even in the best case before 2050, in the most optimistic case. So the warming will continue to grow, and even in the case we really decrease the emission, we will not see something discernible in temperature before 20 years from now, but we could see some improvement, in particular in air pollution, in only a few years. So with every increment of global warming, we will see a worsening of the effect of climate change, both at the global and regional scale. This is what you see here for the hottest day temperature change. This climate impact driver do not grow linearly with the warming. And this is the case both for the maximum temperature, but also for the soil moisture, which is something obviously very important for agriculture. So we see that the aridity in the zone with Mediterranean climate will worsen with every increment of warming. And this is also the case of the wettest day precipitation that occur even in the region which are affected by more arid climate, as we've all seen last week in Greece, for example, which can cause even worse flood when heavy precipitation come on dry soil. So the future climate change is projected to increase also the severity of impact across natural and human systems. So both the pressure on ecosystem, the condition with heat and moisture, which are dangerous for life and that prevent to work outside, but also the pressure on the food production system. So I will not detail this bad news today, but you can find them in the synthesis report. So to limit the warming to 1.5 or 2 degrees, so to stay in the Paris Agreement zone, we would need rapid and deep decrease in greenhouse gas emissions. This is what you see in blue and green on the screen, so a very rapid decrease of emission. And what we see when we as scientists analyze the publication, we see that there is still a gap between the promises of the government, which are the NDCs, so there is still a gap between what has been promised by the government in the context of the Paris Agreement and what should be done to remain in the safest zone. And there is also a gap between these NDCs and what is effectively implemented in the right and in the policies of the country. So far, if we do not do better policies, we will reach probably more than 3 degrees warming at the end of this century. But the good news, and this is something very important, obviously, to communicate as teacher, is the fact that we have multiple options for scaling up climate action, so both for adaptation and mitigation. It means deep transformation, obviously, in all sectors, but the IPCC reports analyze what has been already done everywhere and what is really what can be transferred or scaled up. And they also analyze the synergy between some adaptation measure and mitigation measure, and also in the report the synergy or trade-offs with a development goal. So obviously the highest potential is in the way we produce energy and the way we use land. So you can come back to that later. But there are a lot of options that have already been deployed that are acceptable for population and that can be transferred elsewhere, even if obviously there is not a single way to adapt and mitigate, and each country has to find his own way. So the other important point is the necessity of public policies and infrastructure to making the low carbon lifestyle more accessible. This is really a huge potential if we succeed to really make this lifestyle both more accessible but also more desirable, which is something that education can do. It's also really important to insist on the fact that many mitigation options also have co-benefit for health, both by decreasing the air pollution, by promoting active mobility and healthy diets, which are, at least in the developed countries, something very important with some public health problem we have concerning the diet. So the synthesis report and the working group 2 and working group 3 reports in general show that the window of opportunity to adapt and to mitigate and also have both a climate resilient development but to attain the sustainable development goals is narrowing. So we really need in the collective decision to really take into account the effects on climate and the fact that climate change will worsen in the future. This is obviously not systematically the case, and education will be a key for that. And science also informs us on the conditions that enable this decision making, but also conditions that constrain and are barriers for this climate resilient development. Something important which is not in the synthesis report but in the summary for policymakers, a technical summary of the working group 3, is also the way we can act collectively or individually to balance this unsustainable world. And one of the actions that have to be taken individually and collectively is the fact to reframe the way we act as professionals, and this is typically what you do here by changing the rule for the way we teach climate change and environmental problem from the youngest age and all through the learning process for students. So the main conclusion of this 6th IPCC report is the fact that the adverse impact from human-caused climate change will continue to intensify, at least for the next 20 years. And the extent to which the future generation will experience other and different world really depend on decisions that have to be taken right now. So it's both important, obviously, to educate the next generation, but it's also very important to take the right decision right now if we really want to make the world safer for the next generation. Thank you.
Thank you, Sophie, for your intervention. So I would like to take advantage of Sophie's presentation about the last finding of IPCC to point out that since its creation in 2018, the OC has a very special relationship with IPCC and a collaboration which makes the school curricula it designs all the more relevant. So thank you for that.